A soft melody drifts through the air. Under harsh stage lights, a lone cello sits abandoned. When Mira Chen steps onto the empty stage, the last person the audience expects is the quiet museum docent they've overlooked for years. But tonight, with trembling hands and steel resolve, she'll prove that sometimes the most extraordinary talents hide in the most ordinary places. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The Whitmore Museum of Fine Arts gleamed under morning light, marble floors reflecting the chandeliers above. Staff members drifted through the halls, preparing for another day of guiding the wealthy and cultured through exhibits worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. Mira Chen tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she straightened, a plaque beside a Renaissance painting. At 32, she moved with careful precision, almost as if trying not to disturb the air around her. Her navy docent uniform hung slightly loose on her small frame. "Chen, there you are." Director Evelyn Hargrove's voice cut through the quiet gallery. "The Bartlett delegation arrives in 20 minutes. They're considering a substantial donation, so everything must be perfect." "Of course, Dr. Hargrove." Mira nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn's gaze swept over Mira with barely concealed disappointment. "And please try to speak up today. These people expect authority, not timidity. If you can't project confidence, just direct them to Dominic for the important pieces." As if summoned, Dominic Wells appeared, his tailored suit and confident stride, marking him as someone who belonged in these hallowed halls. At 35, he'd been fast-tracked for advancement since arriving 6 months ago. "Don't worry, Evelyn. I've prepared a special tour route emphasizing the contemporary acquisitions." His British accent seemed to deepen whenever donors were expected. "Perfect." Evelyn beamed. "Dominic understands what these people respond to." Mira's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her tablet as Dominic flashed her a smirk over Evelyn's shoulder. "Mira can handle the medieval section," he offered magnanimously. "It's mostly background context anyway." After they walked away, Mira closed her eyes briefly and took a controlled breath. 8 years at the Whitmore, 2 advanced degrees, and a dissertation on Italian Renaissance composition techniques, reduced to background context. A text message flashed on her phone, "Still on for tonight's rehearsal." "Marcus." She quickly typed, "Wouldn't miss it." The private reply gave her strength. They didn't know. None of them knew. And for now, that was exactly how she needed it to be. And this extraordinary piece, Dominic gestured grandly toward a large abstract canvas, represents the artist's commentary on urban isolation. The 6 board members from the Bartlett Foundation nodded appreciatively, though Mira noticed the slight confusion in their eyes. The piece was actually about rural agricultural patterns, but Dominic had been improvising facts all morning. They entered the medieval gallery where Mira waited. She offered a small smile and began, "Welcome to our medieval collection. This section features works from the 12th to early 16th centuries." Eleanor Bartlett, the Foundation's matriarch, glanced at Mira's name badge. "Have you been with the museum long?" Before Mira could answer, Dominic stepped forward. "Mira handles our guided tours for school groups. I'd be happy to continue." "Actually," Mira interrupted softly, "I was about to explain the significance of this particular triptych. It's one of only 7 surviving examples of this specific technique." Dominic's smile tightened. "Perhaps we should move on to the Renaissance gallery. Time is limited." "I'd like to hear about the triptych," Eleanor insisted, fixing her gaze on Mira. Mira nodded and began explaining the artwork's history, her voice gaining subtle confidence as she spoke about the composition techniques, the symbolism hidden in the brushwork, and the historical context. "Fascinating," Eleanor murmured when Mira finished. "You seem quite knowledgeable." "Thank you," Mira replied. Mira has a passion for these older pieces," Dominic cut in. "Now, if you'll follow me, I'd like to show you our crown jewel." As they moved away, Dominic whispered harshly, "Know your place, Chen. These aren't middle schoolers you're boring with dates and techniques." Mira's face burned, but she maintained her composure. In the reflection of a glass display case, she caught Eleanor Bartlett looking back at her with curious eyes. The staff meeting the following week buzzed with excitement. The Philharmonic Benefit Concert is our biggest fundraising event of the year, Evelyn announced. As you know, it brings together our most influential patrons and board members. Dominic raised his hand. I've taken the liberty of preparing some remarks about our upcoming acquisitions to deliver during the reception. Excellent, Evelyn nodded. The chamber ensemble will provide background music during the first hour. Then we'll have the featured cellist perform before dinner. Mira looked down at her notepad, carefully controlling her expression. Unfortunately, Evelyn continued, their cellist had a family emergency. Marcus from development has been scrambling to find a replacement. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, there's been a slight complication. Our backup performer has also cancelled. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. 2 days before the event? Evelyn's voice rose. Can't the ensemble perform without a cellist? The feature piece requires one, Marcus explained. We're still searching, but most professionals are booked. This is a disaster, Evelyn muttered. The Bartlett Foundation representatives will be there specifically to hear Barber's Adagio. Eleanor requested it personally. The room fell silent. Careers and funding hung in the balance. Mira's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel Marcus looking at her, waiting. With a quiet breath, she raised her hand slightly. Yes, Mira. Evelyn sounded exasperated. Mira hesitated, suddenly aware of all eyes on her. I play the cello. A beat of silence, then Dominic laughed. Right, and I'm secretly a ballet dancer. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. I'm serious, Mira insisted, her voice stronger now. I studied at Juilliard before switching to art history. Evelyn's eyebrows shot up. You never mentioned this in your employment file. It wasn't relevant to my position, Mira explained, but I still practice regularly. The Barber Adagio isn't exactly a beginner's piece, Dominic scoffed. I know the piece, Mira replied simply. An uncomfortable silence descended as everyone looked to Evelyn. Could you really perform it? Evelyn asked, skepticism evident. Professionally, in front of the Bartletts and everyone else. Yes, Mira said more confidently than she'd ever spoken at work. I can. Dominic crossed his arms. Perhaps we should hear her play first, before risking the entire event on a tour guide's hobby. The word hobby stung, but Mira kept her expression neutral. Fine, Evelyn decided. The rehearsal space should be empty now. Why don't you show us what you can do? The small rehearsal room felt crowded with Evelyn, Dominic, Marcus, and 2 other staff members watching as Mira opened the cello case stored there for visiting musicians. That's a museum instrument, Evelyn warned. It's quite valuable. I understand, Mira nodded, handling it with practiced care. Dominic leaned against the wall, checking his watch with exaggerated impatience. Some of us have actual work to return to. Mira ignored him as she positioned the cello between her knees. The familiar weight felt like greeting an old friend. She closed her eyes briefly, then began to tune the instrument. Just a short demonstration. Will suffice, Evelyn said. A minute or so of the Adagio. Very well, Mira agreed. She took a deep breath and drew the bow across the strings. The first note hung in the air, rich and resonant, followed by the haunting melody that had moved audiences for decades. The transformation was immediate. Mira's posture straightened, her movements became fluid and confident, and the music flowed from her fingers as naturally as breathing. The room disappeared as she lost herself in the piece, drawing out each note with perfect control and deep emotion. When she finally stopped, the silence was profound. Marcus broke it with soft applause. That was extraordinary. Evelyn blinked rapidly. Well, that was certainly adequate. Even Dominic seemed momentarily speechless before recovering his composure. Lucky for us you had this hidden talent tucked away, he said, his tone making it sound more like an accusation than a compliment. It's settled then, Evelyn decided. Mira will perform at the benefit. Marcus, make sure her name is added to the program. As they filed out, Dominic lingered behind. One decent performance doesn't change anything, Chen. You're still just a docent playing dress-up. After he left, Mira carefully returned the cello to its case. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and something she hadn't felt in years, anticipation. The night of the benefit arrived with all the grandeur the Whitmore could muster. The main hall had been transformed with elegant lighting and flowers, and the city's elite mingled in formal attire, champagne glasses in hand. Mira stood backstage in a simple black dress, her cello beside her. Through the curtain she could see Dominic charming a group of patrons, gesturing animatedly as he described a painting. Evelyn fluttered between groups, her laughter a bit too loud, her smiles a bit too wide. Nervous? Marcus appeared at her side, offering a bottle of water. Terrified, Mira admitted. I haven't performed publicly in years. Why did you stop? He asked gently. Mira stared at her hands. My last year at Juilliard, my instructor told me I had perfect technique but no soul, that I'd never be more than technically proficient. She swallowed hard. After that, it seemed pointless to continue professionally. And yet, you kept playing. I couldn't stop, she said simply. The music was still inside me. The chamber ensemble finished their set to polite applause. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. That's your cue. Show them what's been inside you all this time. Mira walked onto the stage, the weight of dozens of curious eyes following her. She recognized many faces, wealthy donors who had barely glanced at her during tours, colleagues who had talked over her in meetings, and in the front row, Eleanor. Bartlett, looking intrigued. Setting up her music stand, Mira caught sight of Dominic whispering to a board member, both looking skeptical. Evelyn stood nearby, nervously twisting her program. Mira positioned the cello and adjusted her seat. The murmurs in the audience gradually died down as expectation filled the air. For a moment, doubt clouded her mind. She was just a docent after all. Who was she to perform in front of these people? Then she remembered why she had first fallen in love with music, not for the audience, not for recognition, but for the pure joy of creating something beautiful. She closed her eyes, took a breath and began to play. The first notes of Barber's Adagio for strings rose into the vaulted ceiling, slow and deliberate. Mira leaned into the cello, feeling the vibrations travel through her body as she drew the bow with precise control. As the piece progressed, she forgot about the audience entirely. Her body swayed gently with the music, her face expressing every emotion the composition evoked: longing, sorrow, and finally transcendence. The crescendo built gradually, each note more intense than the last, until Mira's entire being seemed focused on the climactic moment. When it came, the pure high note sustained perfectly as tears formed in her eyes, the emotion too powerful to contain. Then came the gentle descent, like a soft exhalation after a moment of perfect clarity. Mira's fingers danced across the strings, with delicate precision, bringing the piece to its conclusion with heartbreaking tenderness. When the final note faded, Mira opened her eyes to absolute silence. For one horrible moment, she thought she had failed. Then, Eleanor Bartlett rose to her feet. One by one, others followed until the entire room stood, erupting in thunderous applause. Through tear-blurred vision, Mira saw Dominic's stunned expression and Evelyn's wide eyes. But it was Eleanor's approving nod that finally allowed Mira to breathe again. She stood shakily and bowed, overwhelmed by the continued applause. As she left the stage, her legs trembled so badly she nearly stumbled. That was unbelievable, Marcus said as he met her backstage, eyes wide with wonder. You've been hiding this the whole time? Mira couldn't speak, adrenaline and emotion making. Her hands shake as she carefully placed the cello in its case. Mira! Evelyn's voice rang out as she hurried over, face flushed with excitement. Eleanor Bartlett wants to speak with you immediately. Before Mira could respond, she was being guided through the crowd. People reached out to touch her arm, offering congratulations. Faces that had looked through her for years now sought her. Attention. Eleanor Bartlett stood with several Foundation board members, all of whom turned as Mira approached. There she is, Eleanor said warmly. My dear, that was a revelation. Thank you, Mira managed, her voice hoarse with emotion. Where did you study? One of the board members asked. Juilliard, Mira answered, gaining confidence. I completed most of the performance program before switching to art history. A waste of extraordinary talent, another commented. Eleanor shook her head. Not a waste, a detour perhaps. She fixed Mira with a penetrating gaze. The foundation is establishing a resident artist program at the Whitmore. We'd like you to be our first participant. Mira blinked in confusion. I don't understand. We want to fund a position that combines your musical talent with your art expertise, Eleanor explained. Educational concerts, themed musical tours through the galleries, bringing these different art forms together. That's incredibly generous, Mira stammered. Dominic appeared at Evelyn's side, his smile strained. What a delightful surprise your performance was, Mira. Who would have guessed our quiet docent had such hidden depths? His condescension barely registered as Mira processed Eleanor's offer. Of course, you'd need to discuss the details with Dr. Hargrove, Eleanor continued, but the funding is set aside. We were looking for something innovative, and tonight convinced us this is it. Evelyn stepped forward, practically beaming. We'd be honored to develop this program, wouldn't we, Mira? For the first time, Evelyn looked at her with genuine respect. Yes, Mira agreed, a smile spreading across her face. Yes, I believe we would. As the conversation continued, Mira noticed her hands had stopped shaking. Her chest felt lighter, as if she'd put down a heavy burden she'd carried for years. To our newest star. Marcus raised his glass at the small celebration gathering in his apartment the following weekend. Mira laughed, still not used to the attention. Several colleagues from the museum had come, all suddenly interested in getting to know her better. I still can't believe it, Lisa from Education said. 8 years, and we never knew. I never mentioned it, Mira admitted, sipping her wine. After a while, it seemed easier to be invisible. Well, no one's overlooking you now, Marcus grinned. Evelyn practically genuflects when you walk by. And Dominic? Someone asked. Surprisingly civil, Mira said. Though he did suggest I might want to stick to what I know best when I proposed incorporating medieval music into the Renaissance tour. Some people never change, Marcus shrugged. But you did. I've never seen you this confident. Mira considered this. It wasn't that she felt different, more that she finally felt free to be herself. The person she'd always been behind her quiet exterior was finally visible to others. I have a confession, she said. I sent an application to the symphony orchestra yesterday. Not to join, she clarified, seeing their surprise. To offer specialized educational programs for their youth outreach. That's fantastic, Marcus exclaimed. I don't know if anything will come of it, Mira said, but for the first time in years, I'm not afraid to try. 6 months later, Mira stood in the newly renovated education wing of the Whitmore Museum. The space had been transformed to accommodate both art displays and musical performances, with perfect acoustics and adjustable lighting. A plaque on the wall read, Chen Cultural Synthesis Program, established by the Bartlett Foundation, 2025, Seeing. Her name there still felt surreal. Ready for the inaugural event? Eleanor asked, appearing beside her. As ready as I'll ever be, Mira replied, smoothing down her tailored navy dress. No docent uniform today. The room was filling with people, including museum members, music patrons, and a group of high school students participating in the new program. Dominic entered, nodding stiffly in Mira's direction. Their relationship remained professional but distant. He'd been passed over for promotion the previous month, something he clearly resented. Quite a turnout, he commented, managing a tight smile. Your 15 minutes of fame continue. This isn't about fame, Dominic, Mira replied evenly. It's about bringing different arts together, helping people see connections they might miss otherwise. He raised an eyebrow. Well, best of luck with your little project. As he walked away, Evelyn approached with 2 board members. Mira, Arthur and Jean were just asking about the collaborative curriculum you've developed with the symphony. Mira launched into an explanation of the program, her voice clear and confident. As she spoke, she caught sight of her reflection in one of the display cases. Straight posture, animated gestures, eyes bright with purpose. For a moment, she remembered the timid woman who had once tried to make herself invisible in these very halls. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own worth. When it was time for her presentation, Mira took her place before the audience. Her cello waited nearby, but first she would speak. "Welcome to the first event of our cultural synthesis program," she began, her voice carrying easily through the room. "Today, we'll explore how Renaissance painters and composers used similar techniques to create emotional resonance." As she spoke, she noticed a young girl in the front row watching her with undisguised admiration. The girl held a notebook covered in musical notations, reminding Mira of herself at that age. Later, when Mira performed a piece that corresponded to the painting being displayed, she played for that girl and for the younger version of herself who had once believed she wasn't good enough. The music soared through the gallery, beautiful and confident, much like its performer. Many misjudge quiet souls, assuming silence means emptiness, when often it contains multitudes. The world rushes to label people, success or failure, valuable or dispensable, based on what's immediately visible. But true worth, like the most profound music, often waits in silence for its moment to transform a room, a heart, a life, requiring only the courage to be heard.